So, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and thank you very much for joining this month's event. We kind of appreciate that our presenter this month will be Bertold Salomon. Thank you, Bertold, for accepting to do the presentation of this month about the Austrian wine and just teach us something that we don't know about. I would also take the opportunity to thank the Bailly delegate of Austria, my colleague Norbert Simon, who is not, unfortunately, on line with us as he is traveling. He's a frequent traveler. And he's working for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Austria, and that's why he traveled a lot as such, you know. But while traveling, he's also doing chain business in all the countries in Africa he visited. Anyway, this is not the subject. I just wanted to thank him very much also. And also from Austria, we have Walter. Walter is also the Ishanson. You are the Vice Ishanson.
I'm the national Echanson.
You are the national Echanson.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay, okay. Sorry for that. Anyway, thank you for joining. I mean, we will expect more people from Austria, but I hope that they will join as we go. Now, I wanted to make an announcement. Everybody knows that we have International Grand Chapitre related to wine, OMGD Grand Chapitre. And this year we are restarting or resuming again the Grand Chapitre, and it's going to take place 7th to 11th September 2022 in Hungary, in Budapest. And I think we have one of the participants here. He is already on the list actually for this event. So for those of you who are interested to join, please do that, and it will be a pleasure to welcome you in Budapest as well. Now I'll leave the floor to Tal to do the proper presentation of our presenter, Bertold Salomon. Tal, floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Muhammad. It's a great pleasure and honor to welcome Dr. Bertold Salomon, a winemaker, but more than that. Bertold Salomon was born as a son of a wine grower family in Krems in Austria. And after the high school, he studied international business at the University of Vienna, and he graduated with a PhD degree. He's got a lot of knowledge, of course, and afterward he continued his studies at the business school at the New York University, and worked as a trainee in the new Chateau Estate Wines in New York. In 1982, he moved back to Austria and was in charge of marketing at the Austrian of Wachau region, and then become a member of the board of the Schlumberger wineries. From 1995 until 2002, he was appointed CEO of the Austrian Wine Marketing Association. So he knows a lot about Austrian wine. In 2002, he took over the family winery, Salomon Undhof, and bought also a vineyard in Finniss Australia. So you have Austria and Australia on the two sides of the universe. Now his two children, Fanny and Bert, are taking over the majority of the family enterprise, and also help him with Zoom, as we know. So Bertold, it's a great pleasure to have you with us, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone. But first of all, Tarl and Mohammed and Walter, very kind that you invited me to guide colleagues of yours from Chaîne de Rôtisserie either today or over the next days a little bit through our small Austrian wine country. And before I go into this slideshow or presentation, in sense of size, Austria is 1% of world production. So Austrians that are traveling overseas often ask, why don't we see Austrian wine here or there? And I always tell them, we drink a lot here in Austria, we are exporting something, but we never will be present as much as Italian or French wine internationally, because we just don't have the quantity. And if you compare us to Germany, our northern neighbor, the hectares about twice as much in Germany, but the yields are significantly higher in Germany on average, depending, you know, Mosel and Rheingau, of course, they're also low, but some areas have quite high yields. So in average, the yield of Germany is 4 times as much as Austria and has twice the size. So 1% of world production. And what I would like to do is now to give you a little bit a view into our wine country. And I hope I also already opened for me a glass of wine and have it next to me. And talking about the wine country and not having a glass of wine next to you, next to the computer, I think you're missing out on something. So if you have an Austrian wine open already next to you, that would be fantastic. If not, just open whatever you enjoy or have open in the fridge or want to drink tonight for dinner or as aperitif. So let's dive into the wine country. And I must click it, and then, you know, there is one approach to say, let's say Austria has 7 elements that are defining us as a wine country. The first picture shows terraced vineyards in the Wachau, just 25 kilometers up the river from where I'm talking to you. And Sarah already mentioned, I talk to you from the twin towns Krems and Stein. So we are 1 hour west of Vienna on the river Danube. The climate is, of course, one key element, then the land, the grapes, the culture, the nature, the taste, value for money. So let's go through here. And I always will not necessarily only tell you what you can see written on the screen. I think I should give you additional information. Like here, this picture is from the south of Austria, from Steiermark, Styria, you would say in English, next to the Slovenian border, not far from the Mediterranean. Much more rainfall than up here in the north, where we are north of the Alps, in the range. I think this is a good picture of the country, and it shows you that the wine growing areas in Austria are mostly in the east and northeast. And even if you think in the south, there are 3 large areas. The hectares in the south in Steiermark altogether less than 4,000 hectares. So the significant vineyards of the 50,000 that we have, or 47 or whatever, I always say approximately 50,000 hectares. They are around Vienna, west, northwest, east, and southeast. From the west, you have the Alps coming over. Our most western tip is the Vorarlberg is where it great skiing. And from there, you have the Alps coming over from Switzerland. They start in France and go till the end of the Alps. The eastern end of the Alps is south of Vienna. That's why in the Alps there is no wine growing, and you see here in the west the skis marked in Tyrol. In sense of latitude, we are in the heart of Europe, partly north of Burgundy, south of Champagne, and also, I think interesting for you to see how close we are to Venice or to the Mediterranean. If you look Vienna, driving to Venice, it's maybe 6 hours. Driving to the Mosel is 7 hours. So we are quite close to northern Italy, but we are a landlocked country, have no direct ocean or sea to us, joining us. The weather influences, we have the heat comes from the east. Here it's written as the continental Pannonian climate. So this continental Pannonian climate you find north of the Alps around Vienna, where it's, I mentioned at the start, where it's quite dry, 450 millimeters of precipitation, which is like Napa Valley. So who would think of Austria like this? Just 2.5 hours south from us, you have twice as much in the Alps, because the rain rains itself off in the high mountains. From the west, we have the moderate Atlantic influence, cool air from the north. Sometimes in winter, this can be very dangerous with winter frosts. If we have very dry air moving in from the north or from the northeast, we say Russian high pressure system moving in, then we have clear skies, and then we have the coldest nights. And then if the temperatures go below -20 Celsius, then it's getting dangerous. That's why classically the vineyards in Austria were planted along the rivers, because in the river valleys, if you have very cold nights, then the fog is developing, because the rivers still have a few plus degrees. From the south, of course, the Mediterranean influence, but still we are a cool climate. Here are a few details that we can also discuss later, and I think salt, it will be easier if you collect questions for the end of my presentation, not interrupt now, that we don't technically mess too much. And
no worries, I'm here.
Yeah, great. So the land, that's a view towards the east. Sunrise terraces you find all over Austria, but more west of Vienna than east of Vienna, but also east of Vienna in Luntum. Different types of soils that you find, from gravel, sand, volcanic tuffs in the south, loess, which is quite often in Niederösterreich, that's my county. So the county surrounding Vienna is Lower Austria, Niederösterreich, and loess is compressed glaciers, very fine sands, and then the crystalline gneiss mixed often with schist and granite. That's a view into the Wachau Valley, Weißenkirchen, just 10 kilometers up the river from Stein. Stein, by the way, means stone. So that's where the rocky, stony soil starts. Those are loess terraces in the Weinviertel, but you have similar terraces like this east of Krems and the Wachau. That's the Kamptal from us, like 15 minutes northeast, view down from the Heiligenstein. So quite intense wine growing. That's flat land around the Neusiedler See. That's the huge lake bordering or building water frontier between Hungary and Austria. A very shallow lake, only 2 meters deep, and lots of wine growing around this lake. Now we are back to the Steiermark. You remember the first picture, very green, hilly sides, much more rainfall than we have up here in the northeast. And this is Vienna. Vienna, the only European capital with significant wine growing within its city limits. And I think Vienna has 750 hectares of vineyards, and the mayor is very proud. And the mayor also owns some vineyards, and they also have an owned winery by the city, and all the mayors always enjoy very much to be involved in wine and to support the local wine growing, and not want to be the vineyard converted into building land, because this is of course very much in demand like in every other European capital. The grapes. The grape varieties in Austria are dominated by, you must go in the second line below, special autochthonous varieties. And the first grape variety named there is Grüner Veltliner. Green Veltliner, green because of this, because the skins also are green when the grapes are ripe, mostly. So this is Grüner Veltliner, this grape variety dominates 1/3 of all plantings in Austria. If you go up to the upper part of the international varieties that you find in Austria, it starts off with Riesling. And because we speak German, very often in international markets, our customers think that Riesling is as widespread in Austria as it is in Germany. It is not. Overall in Austria, Riesling is planted less than 5%. At our family vineyard, it's 50-50, Grüner Veltliner and Riesling. How come? Because Riesling is mostly planted in 3 areas, Wachau, Kremstal, Kamptal, because here you find the rocky soils. On the one hand, the rocky soils make fantastic Rieslings, those stone fruit characters that we love. On the other hand, the Grüner Veltliner struggles in dry periods in the rocky soils because the drainage is very, very fast. Other international grape varieties, Sauvignon Blanc, Muscatella, Pinot Blanc. In Pinot Blanc and Chardonnay, you find more east of Vienna or in Vienna itself, or then also in the south in Steiermark, especially Sauvignon Blanc is strong there. Pinot Noir, Cabernet and Merlot. So almost all international grape varieties, let's say, there's really big grape varieties for cool wine growing areas. But I want to go now into the red wine grape varieties. Austria, in the meanwhile, I think is 1/3 is already red wine planted. Yeah, and Walter gives me a good example. He opened a glass of wine. So cheers to everyone who already has a glass of wine next to him or in front of himself. And thanks again for joining this hopefully lazy afternoon with us.
Cheers.
So if you go into this paragraph on the special autochthon varieties, you have 3 names. Zweigelt is the first. Second red wine called, named here is Blaufränkisch. And third is St. Laurent. I start off with Blaufränkisch as St. Laurent. Blaufränkisch is thick-skinned, very robust in the vineyard, not easy to get botrytis, makes red wines with lots of backbone, has a good acidity, but depending on the winemaking, you can have a, you know, from let's say Nebbiolo, lighter Nebbiolo style to dark, very concentrated tannic red wines, depending on the date of picking, depending, of course, on the yield. And Blaufränkisch is an old grape variety called in Hungary Keckfränkisch. And the St. Laurent, Saint Laurent, probably the French would say, is like a cousin grape to the Pinot Noir, thin-skinned, a prima donna in the vineyard, easy to catch botrytis. And Professor Zweigelt, who was teaching at our most important wine growing school near Vienna, close to Neuburg, he made crossings between St. Laurent and Blaufränkisch, St. Laurent making very fine, elegant wines like the Pinot Noir. And out came the Zweigelt, which was called after his family name. And as it always is, the parents, it's not an identical grape variety, and that's what he did want to create, to either or, father or mother. And it's a grape variety very much by itself. And this is the most popular grape variety now in Austria that also can make a wide spectrum of wines, starting from easy drinking, light red, Gamay style reds. Mostly Zweigelt is very fruity, not very tannic, but still, you know, low yielding, long skin fermentation on skins, and then long skin maceration afterwards can make dark, quite complex and concentrated red wines. But generally, this has a lovely cherry fruit, dark cherry fruit that you find in Zweigelt wines. Okay, the culture. Austria on the one side is, of course, living very much. The past is everywhere present in Austria. The Habsburg Empire, where that was very influential for a long, you know, a few centuries, left us fantastic old buildings that are present. And also our building here I'm talking to you had been a farm to a monastery that was privatized in the Habsburg times by Joseph II. But here you see a modern wine-related building in Langenlois, and I guide you through a few pictures now. This is a typical cellar gasse, Kellergasse, outside of the village. Cellars that are dug into the ground, into the hill. And in the front, on the slope foot of the hill, you have those small houses, and those are typically outside of the villages, next to the vineyards. And that's from the Weinviertel. You find many of those Kellergassen, and they also have then during the summer great opening and great parties at those Kellergassen. Those are really lovely events. Baroque buildings in Austria. Everywhere, this is the famous Kellerschlössl from Domäne Wachau in Dürnstein. From us, 7 minutes up the river. Stift Götzbeck, the monasteries have been enormously influential in Austrian winemaking and viticulture. And this is the Benedictiner Kloster Stift Götzbeck, opposite of Krems on the south shore, overlooking the river Danube Valley. Very impressive. So technically, the Wachau was bordered in the east by Stift Götzbeck and in the west by Stift Melk. That's a great new winery from the also old established noble family of Burgenland, Esterhazy. if there's somebody from Hungary who can pronounce it better, Malta is Esterhazy probably, right? So great new buildings have been established in Austrian wine growing areas. I would say this started in the late 80s. This strong investment in new cellars and also taking new architecture into the wine growing areas. Nature, lambs, sheep in the vineyard. That's a very, very good approach. We do this in our vineyard in Australia in winter. In summer, it's less advisable because the sheep also enjoy to nibble on the grapes. So this here is a picture either after the harvest or just quickly posing for the picture. But winter is amazing because the sheep are eating all the weeds that you don't want to have under the vines, grazing on the weeds. Austrian agriculture is 27% organic. Vineyard is 15-16%, has a strong following. Sustainable, also about 15%, but minimum intervention has a long tradition. And here I come to this general low yields of 75 hectoliters, meaning 7,500 liters per hectare. Science, certified science, but that's, you will see on the bottle if you see that's explained there. Value for money. You know, you always need to compare yourself to other wine growing areas, and I think Austrian wines you have a wide spectrum of still very economic wines that are not expensive, but I think this is especially on white wines. On red wines, as there is smaller production, also strong production in demand in Austria, you see better value on the white wines. But you will say now this is a comparison of apples and pears, because Grüner Veltliner is not Chardonnay, and Grüner Veltliner does not do mostly malolactic fermentation and does not go into small oak. But funny enough, if you have 10-year-old Grüner Veltliner of single vineyards, old wines, and bring them in blind tastings next to lovely wines from Burgundy, those wines can show really very interestingly. And as Burgundy is everyone's darling now in the wine world, they have the highest price gains over the last 10-15 years. It's always good to compare wines next to the leaders in the white wine category. But this is not written from me. This was written from the Austrian Wine Institute. So I'm using their great presentation here. And then it comes to taste. This is our famous Wiener Schnitzel, which I love. Most Austrians love, but we don't eat Wiener Schnitzel every day. We also eat Italian cuisine, and Austrian cuisine is different to German cuisine because we had the influence of Hungarian, Northern Italy, Slovenian, Bohemian, Czech cuisine. So Vienna has been a very multi-cultural cuisine. Now we have the asparagus season starting, and Krems Austria, because of the mountains, is a big country of cheese production, of cow cheese primarily, sheep cheese not as much as in France. And here we have another final picture. And this is the Instagram. Thank you for your attention. But now I want to share one more slide with you that shows the Austrian wine growing maps. The wine country of Austria, which I would like to share with you. And we must see if this is, can you see it already, Sir?
No, not yet.
Now?
Yes.
Now it is there.
Okay, great. So I must lean a little bit closer to the picture now, and forgive me if I'm out of the screen now a little bit. But if you look at this map, is it good for you to see? Yeah.
Well, it's hard to read what's in there.
It's hard to read, but
Too small.
I don't know. I can try to increase it a bit.
Can you make it a full screen, please?
Yeah, you can change from 125 to 150. Yeah, and move it to the center. More.
It is down to 80 now.
More. That's great. Move it.
Yeah, but I must bring it back into the. I think I now have it. Is it small or at large?
Very small.
Small, very small.
Yeah.
Continue with this direction, it's fine. More.
Yeah, we are messing around here now. I don't have it at all now. Okay, the green area is all around Vienna, and this is mostly Niederösterreich. The red area is Burgenland, and the dark green area in the south is Steiermark. And if you start with Vienna in the northeast, our capital, it is good to say that you can reach the Austrian wine growing areas by car easily, most of them in this county of Niederösterreich within 1 hour, 1.5 hours drive. Most areas of the Burgenland as well. And what's the big difference? In Niederösterreich, the warm influence from the east, coming from the east, is less strong. So the further west you get, the cooler it gets. And in Austria, in the north of the Alps, the further east you get, the warmer it gets. And as I had mentioned in the beginning, Pannonian climate, the heat comes from Hungary. And so the Grüner Veltliner, which does not like the heat so much, you find mostly in Niederösterreich, the county here colored in light green. And in this green area, you have the most western wine growing area is the wine growing area Wachau, just up the river from my town, from Stein. Then I'm sitting here in the Kremstal area, which is north and south of the river Danube, and also leading up north into the Krems River Valley. And then northeast comes the Kamptal, just joining border with Kremstal. Those three areas have the coolest spot is in the west, in Spitz. And in Wachau, you find on the rocky sides the Riesling, on the low sides and in the river flat, you find the Grüner Veltliner. And then the other grape varieties like Neuburger or Muscatella, and also Zweigelt a little bit, and Pinot Blanc, and some Chardonnay, some Sauvignon, but mostly it's white wine here in the Wachau and Kremstal. Kremstal has a little bit more red wine than Wachau. Kamptal then also has a little bit more red again. But those are the three areas where you have Grüner Veltliner, Grüner Veltliner, Grüner Veltliner, and then as second important grape variety, Riesling. And those areas are known for dry white wines. So the Austrian wine law has been changing over the last decades. And after the Second World War, Austria copied the German wine law with the sugar pyramid, Qualitätswein, Kabinett, Spätlese, Auslese, Bernauslese, Trockenbernauslese. So defining the quality of a wine or relating the quality of a wine to the sugar content in the grape juice. Quite different to the Roman, French, Spanish, Italian approach of the appellation contrôlée or denominazione d'origine. And Austria has been moving away from the German sugar pyramid towards a more origin thinking, and also a democratization in the Austrian wine growing areas happened. We have those regional committees now, similar to France, that also can have influence on wine legislation. Not that they make the wine legislation, but they can make proposals to the minister, and or not to the minister, to a national committee. But it is not, wine legislation is not happening only from top down anymore. It's also growing from out of the wine growing areas, where in those committees you have wine growers and the wine trade in equal parts. And so this might be maybe confusing on the labels, because if there is a change in Austria, changes are not happening quickly. And maybe I should tell you a little joke here. Is anybody from Switzerland listening to us here today on this wine presentation?
No, but I'm sure they will in the YouTube.
Yeah.
They'll see it.
Yeah, sometimes the Swiss think the Austrians are a little slower than the Swiss are, and not in skiing necessarily, but although they are very fantastic in skiing, but it depends on the year which nation is better. But two Swiss gentlemen meet and say, it doesn't look good with the world. What will you do? Where will you go if the whole world goes down the drain? So the second Swiss says, no doubt I go to Austria. The first one says, why do you go to Austria? He said, there everything happens 10 years later. So why do I say this? And I come back to, and I started to talk about this now, this change. So these revolutions, Austria is not really a country for revolutions. The Austrians are more people of compromise and Gemütlichkeit. Gemütlichkeit is something like lazy Sunday afternoon. And this has advantages and disadvantages, this Gemütlichkeit, but the move from the sugar pyramid towards origin thinking is happening a little slower, but we already have in the Kremstal now Kremstal DAC, which means Districtus Austria Controllatus. So only a dry Grüner Veltliner or a dry Riesling can be bottled under Kremstal DAC. For instance, my brother and my father had an old Traminer vineyard. My father had labeled under the single vineyard name, Wachtberg. We would not do this anymore. We just label it under the grape variety, would not use the designation or could not use the designation Kremstal and use the designation of the county. In the county, you still have the Qualitätsweinkabinett and Spätlese system. So this is what's happening. But another important thing where Austria was slow was after the Second World War, we kept the terraces. And in Germany, on the Rheingau, on the Mosel, many terraces were taken out, and in sense of making the vineyard management more efficient and bringing those small vineyards together that have been separated over decades or centuries among different family members, rejoining them again. We did not take out the terraces, and we are very happy now. And I always thought Mosel and Rheingau didn't have those terraces, but as our son had done a master in viticulture and enology, he studied at the University of Vienna and then also at this really very good wine growing school in Germany, in Geisenheim. And we visited him there, and he said that many terraces only were taken out in the 50s, and meaning you have more erosion problems, and we have been slow, and we kept those terraces that the Catholic Church, the monasteries, were introducing to the wine growers in the Middle Ages. So sometimes not being too fast has advantages. And then east comes the Wagram, north the largest wine growing area, the Weinviertel. Then south of Vienna, a very old wine growing area, the Thermenregion. And there you have this famous Zierfandler and Rotgipfler grape varieties you only find in this area, making very rich wines. Gumpelskirchen, an old wine town that was famous for semi-sweet wines. So this way we covered Niederösterreich, and one thing that also had mentioned at the beginning and want to repeat now, in Niederösterreich, wine growing areas very often are along the rivers because you are protected from the very severe winter frosts in the river valleys, more protected by the river folk. East of Vienna, the Burgenland, Castle land, which is, you could divide in the northern part and in the southern part. The northern part is close to the Neusiedler See, this quite large, very shallow lake. And the closer you get to the lake, the more sweet wine production you have. The further you get away from the lake, you have red wines there on the hills surrounding the lake. Because close to the lake, you have the botrytis, and further away, you don't have the botrytis, which every red wine producer hates botrytis, of course. And then you have the south, which is mostly Blaufränkisch, so more Zweigelt around the lake, and Blaufränkisch further in the south. And then the southern tip of Burgenland is already in climate similar to those three large dark green areas, and those are Weststeiermark, Südsteiermark, and Südoststeiermark. And again, I repeat now something that I said in the beginning. Those three areas look large, but this is not intensive wine growing area. This is extensive. So you have small lots of vineyards all over these areas spread out. And all those three areas together have a similar dimension in hectares like the Kamptal, which is a small area on this map here in the north, a little bit east of Krems, but much more intense vineyards that you can find there. So I'm sorry that technically I was not able to show this better to you, but there are good homepages from Wine from Austria. And if you want to go further into detail, please surf to those pages. And I raise the glass now to you for your patience listening to me almost 50 minutes. And Karl, you must take over for questions now, which I hope there are many.
Thank you, Bertold. Thank you very much. And of course, don't worry about the technique. I will add to the YouTube channel, I will add the link to the map so people can see it in their home big and with easy. Now is the question time. If anyone wants to ask Bertold any question about Austrian wine, this is the time to do that.
Yeah, you can unmute yourself now.
Unmute is a good word.
So,
can you tell me what percentage of grapes, the top three grapes grown in Austria, and what percentage they are of the total?
It's a very good question, and I'm not really able to tell you. I only know that Grüner Veltliner is about 1/3 of all plantings, and all red wine grape variety are covering 1/3 of Austria. So then 1/3 is red, 1/3 is Grüner Veltliner, the rest is split up among the other grape varieties.
Okay.
But the Zweigelt is dominating. So I would say Grüner Veltliner and Zweigelt have about 50%.
Okay. And what about Riesling? How much? I just
4%, only 4%. But at our vineyard, it's almost 50-50.
Okay.
We are, I mean, 50-50. We have some Muscatel and some Traminer. In a rented vineyard, we have some Zweigelt. We don't make a red wine, we make a sparkling rosé. But the majority, over 90% of our vineyards is split up 50-50 Grüner Veltliner Riesling, which is quite rare. As I said, all over Austria, only 4%. And you find Riesling mostly Wachau, Kremstal, Kamptal, Dreisental, south from us. I forgot to mention before, also a lovely, great small wine growing area with east-facing vineyards. Very good Grüner Veltliner from there, also Riesling.
Thank you.
I have a few questions with your permission. The first one is, in average, what is the yield, which means kilogram per hectare for white grapes and red grapes? I will ask the three questions and then you can answer them continuously. The second one is, in order to get quality grapes, you need to make the vines to suffer. And as you have a lot of water, how you make the vines to suffer? Third question is, you show some picture that ships are going in the vineyards. And I'm wondering why, because I think this is not good, because ships are heavy with small and narrow legs, and they tie the ground and they prevent ventilation to the ground, to the soil. Those are the three questions. Why you allow it?
I maybe start with the first, with the last, with the sheep. And the picture of the sheep in the vineyard that was shown in this presentation was either during the, obviously after picking, because you cannot have sheep in the vineyard while you have grapes in the vineyard, because they are nibbling on the grapes. And so mostly the sheep are during winter, because they are feeding on the weeds. So most people in Austria don't use any spray against weeds. So it's either done, they are taken out mechanically or by hand or by sheep. And you do, if you have the sheep in the vineyards during the winter, then they leave behind, they leave the natural fertilization, and then you're opening up the soil anyway in spring. What we do, we open the soil every second row, and you open the soil between the vines. So because that's also quite common in Austria, you don't leave the grass there, because grass is very shallow rooting. You want deep rooting herbs and clover. And they are not so heavy. So I think compression of tractor is more a problem than the sheep are.
Okay.
So that's the third. The second one was what was the second?
About how you make the vines to suffer in order to produce better grapes.
Yeah, so I agree 100%. Good wine only grows where the soil is not very fertile. And in Austria, of course, you do not have only classified single vineyards or first-class vineyards, but the hillsides generally are mostly the better vineyards than the flat vineyards. And then on the hills, you don't have rich black soils. You have rocky soils or loess soils. Both are not very fertile. And I come back to the general precipitation in Austria north of the Alps, which is 450 milliliters. So this is not very much. As I mentioned, this is like Napa Valley. And only in the south you have more rain. But the quality of the grapes also comes by low yields. And this brings me to the first question, or maybe I want to add one more thing to the approach of make the wine suffering. The wines are written with a V, so the vineyard suffering, the plant suffering. In summer, we might have also 35, 38 degrees days in the summer. Not the last 2 years, but the years before we had. And if we have a longer, drier period of 3, 4, 5 weeks, then the vines are shutting down. They are not developing anymore the grapes. They are just trying to survive. And you have no development in the grapes. So this is a narrow path to go, where too much suffering for the grapes, then you have, or for the wines, you have phenols developing in the skins, and in the white wines, you don't want to have too much phenols. So it is we say Gratwanderung, like if you go on the narrow path somewhere on the hill, you should not They should not have too much water, but if it's way too little, they are suffering too much. On white wines, this is not ideal. On red wines, let's say on Grenache, which is thin-skinned and does not have much tannin anyway. If it would be high yielding and in a fertile soil with lots of water, this needs to be stressed, and this brings the best wines. But stressed Riesling or stressed Krems Austria are not necessarily the best wines. But definitely from rich, dark, fertile soils, it is not something we would define as good vineyards. And we don't have any. We have mostly terraced vineyards. But of course, you will have some light, easy to drinking Krems Austria, like you have from northern Italy, from the Veneto, some Pinot Grigio, or from the Collio, not from the Collio itself, but from the larger appellation, from the Friuli. The soil and the microclimate define very much the quality of. You're very right, and the yield, of course, too. The pruning is the very important factor. And now to the yield, and I repeat that number once more. The average yield of Austria is 50, and it was written in this presentation wrong, because we have approximately 50,000 hectares and we have approximately 2.5 million hectoliters. So this is 50 hectoliter per hectare, which is approximately 7,000 kilos. And which is low. And it's not only low because of high quality, but because of a very small structured Austrian, and the word wine industry is wrong because it's very much family driven, small vineyard owners that make vineyards in the Weinviertel or also in our area, that have inherited the vineyards from their parents or grandparents and do this also on the weekend and sell the grapes to a local trading house or to a cooperative. So Austria has not many large companies, and it is a very artisanal, hands-on winemaking. It is not grape growing. Sorry, I must correct me. So yeah. This is the number. 47 to 50,000 hectares, 2.1 to 2.5 million hectoliters. This is to remember, and this is for a country a very low average yield. The maximum yield that's allowed for Qualitätswein to get the quality seal and to use an appellation is 9,000 kilo. And the wine that I have in the glass here is the Pfaffenberg. I must show it to you. There we have maybe not even 3,000 kilos per hectare.
Wow.
This is a vineyard, our most western vineyard, very steep. It's the river, the road, a cliff of 50 meters, and then the terraces start, very shallow topsoils, and old wines also not yielding high, but yeah. Thanks for those really 3 great questions.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yes, me. Bertold, you didn't talk about the ice wine, Austrian ice wine. And we know that Austria has a very good and excellent ice wine. So my question is, how big is the ice wine production? And what grape varieties are used for that? And the timing for the harvest and all this?
Yeah. A very good question, and if I must give a long answer to that, because the classic sweet wine production area in Austria is the Burgenland. And the Burgenland is east of Vienna, and the climate has changed in that way that ice wine production there has become more and more difficult, because in contrast to Canada, where ice wine can be made in a cooling container, that where you bring the grapes and freeze them and then make the ice wine from it. This is legally not possible in Austria. So in Austria, you must have, you must pick the grapes. Exactly the number, I don't know, but it's minus 10 or 11, it must have had in the night. And then you register, you have the cellar inspector coming, and he gives you a certification that you press it, you go out and pick at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning, and then you pick the picked grape still must be partly frozen to make an ice wine. And then there's also the minimum sugar content. So this normally happens in November or December. But due to we have a later start of winter. This also in skiing. When I was 40 years ago or 45 years ago, skiing started here in the Alps always early December. It was like almost 100%. The first weekend in December you had skiing. But now we are lucky if we have snow for Christmas. Generally we have snow for Christmas, but not most of the years the snow does not come already in end of November. Or if it comes, it melts again. So ice wine production in Burgenland has become very difficult, and it's often happening only then in after New Year's, and then the vineyards must be netted. Otherwise, the birds would have a feast on the grapes. But there is a new area that has developed a reputation for ice wine, which is north of the Wachau, in an area where you have, we say cold air lakes developing, which you don't have in the Burgenland because of the Neusiedler See. And you ask which grape variety. Burgenland hardly has Grüner Veltliner now, but they did have Grüner Veltliner in the 60s because everyone wanted Grüner Veltliner, and also in Burgenland there was Grüner Veltliner planted when the sweet wine was not so popular. But Grüner Veltliner then was replaced by Zweigelt then in the 80s and late 70s. So there's not much Grüner Veltliner left, but Grüner Veltliner is a very good grape variety for ice wine because it's very thick-skinned and not so easily to be attacked by botrytis. In Niederösterreich, north of the Wachau, of Kirchberg am Wachau, there is a town called Großriedental, and they are like there are no rivers there and no lake, and in this valley you have a cold air lake developing, and they have had good success with ice wine, and that's a Grüner Veltliner area. So they can do an ice wine then if they are lucky in early December. So sorry for that good short question and bad long answer.
Well, thank you very much.
Can I ask a question, please? Do you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. First, wine fact which you can confirm: Vienna is the only capital in the world which is a wine region by itself.
In Europe, in the world, I would not know, but in Europe, as far as I know, there is no significant wine growing within the city limits of Madrid or Paris or Rome. And you have within the city limits of Vienna, you have almost 800 hectares of vineyards. So of the European capitals, of the world capitals, I would not know, but Washington, as far as I know, has no vineyards. Canada, in Latin America, Central America, none. In Buenos Aires, there is none. Santiago de Chile, probably not. Canberra, I don't know how many hectares are within the Canberra city limits. I don't know.
As far as I know, there isn't, and Vienna
Okay.
is
the only one. Okay.
I've been there, and it was wonderful to visit the wineries. Actually vineyards I've been.
Yeah, the vineyards and also the Heurigen, which is
right. Yeah,
we have the enjoy the young wine and the cold cut and the Lipton cheese and so on.
And second question, which is something I've noticed, there is a Smaragd section of wine, which is a quality section.
Yes.
I guess this is the best ones.
Smaragd is a registered brand name by the Winegrower Association of the Wachau wine growing area. And this was started in the year 85, 86, because, and this shows the downside of the German wine law approach, that a sugar content in a grape juice defines the quality of the wine. In the Burgenland, where it's much warmer, to have a Spätlese is easily accomplished every year if you just wait long enough with picking. But in the Wachau or in the Kremstal, it is similar, like on the Rheingau and the Mosel, you don't have a Spätlese every year. You must have a low yield, and you must wait long in the season to pick. And the Wachau said, we don't want to use the names Spätlese anymore. First of all, people think Spätlese is semi-dry or sweet, and we want to have complex, richer, dry white wines, and we call them Smaragd after the Smaragd lizard, the green Smaragd lizard that you can find on the stone terraces in the Wachau, here in the Kremstal, and mostly stone terraces here in Kremstal and Wachau. And of course, the Wachau wine growers, the top wine growers, have put fantastic wines behind this brand name and made the term Smaragd known worldwide for their top dry Grüner Veltliner and Riesling from their best vineyards. But technically, it is still just a term, dry, replacing dry Spätlese, connected with the origin Wachau.
I understand. Thank you.
Anyone else? Tal, where did you go? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, if there are no further questions to Dr. Salomon, anyone else? No? Okay, then I would like to thank you so much, Bertold, for this fantastic presentation and widening our horizon and knowledge about the Austria and Austrian wine and Austria as wine region. So thank you once again, and please be ready to join us again, so for another topic. And I just wanted to end up the session here and say thank you to everybody all the colleagues who participated on the presentation, and look forward to see you in the following months presentations as well. So ladies and gentlemen, thanks a lot and have a good evening.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Have a lovely Sunday. Thanks for having
Thank
me.
you. The same to you.
The best.
Okay.
Great
you,
thanks to
Bertold.
everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers. Cheers.
All the best. Cheers.
Cheers. Mhm.
All the best.
All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.